Hey, what's up, everyone? I just had to pipe in really quick on the whole Alex Jones versus Piers Morgan debate because there was things that I loved about it and there was things that I didn't like about it. So the short of it is that if you didn't already hear about it, Alex Jones went on to a show with Piers Morgan to do a debate. And what happened was is that Alex Jones basically goes through all of his points, pretty much, yelling and what's seen as like ranting and raving. And on the surface, to anybody watching that, it would definitely turn them off. Most people are, politicizing their mindset in that stylistically, someone will tune out somebody because of how it's presented, even if the information is credible or important. And I think that's definitely what happened in this case. Alex Jones' method of presentation, definitely turned off a lot of people that might have been center, left, obviously people, left, whatever, in the left-right paradigm. More statist in that sense. Maybe some people that appreciate that are conservative, paleoconservative might like it, libertarian. But the point is that on one hand, it wasn't really the best way to present the information for convincing people watching it. But if you look at what's happening in the video, that isn't really what Alex Jones was looking to do. It's pretty clear that if you look from the beginning when he points out Piers Morgan's cue card, what he was emphasizing in like doing all these talking points and talking over him was that Piers Morgan was obviously through working with his producers in the set was trying to do those little couch questions to frame the debate in a way, and if there were times allotted, not give Jones the opportunity to speak. Now that being said, could it have been handled differently? Possibly. Yeah, I mean, it could have been handled differently where if you had a really well articulated answer, you can come back with it. But what Jones decided to do is just go with the machine gun method and actually intentionally go after Morgan. And what's funny is there is that huge amount of discomfort on his face because Jones does bring up Morgan's past issues with his reporting that he was potentially being investigated for with false journalism, and Jones also brings in lots of information about people committing suicide and doing crazy things because of different types of antidepressant medication or attention deficit disorder medication and things like that. And so what happened was Alex Jones pretty much like he usually does goes into his huge emotional rant and rave. He put forward a lot of information that someone who isn't immediately turned off by that presentation would go and look up and probably find a lot of really interesting things following up on it. But unfortunately, that got lost in the translation. But that I think that if you look at how it's presented, I think that's what Jones was doing. He was anticipating that the producers were setting him up to do like the emotional couch questions and then cut him off, not be able to speak to follow up on those things. If you look at Piers Morgan, like should do Americans need to have that type of gun? Obviously, it's not a matter of need. Rights are independent of need. Just like anything else that is fundamental to your existence, it doesn't matter whether or not you actually need that. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see how this unfolds. I'm very curious to see how many people follow up on it because it was trending quite a bit on Twitter. But I mean, it sucks. The information's there, and there's some really good information that Jones did present. I mean, he still did kind of couch it in the us versus them mentality, where America versus Britain. I mean, it's cutesy if you're into that paleoconservative libertarian mindset, but it'll, in other words, it might inspire people that are a bit of the older generation, 40s and 50s, who have that type of American nostalgia, like the World War II nostalgia. But realistically, I think his methods went on, deaf ears as far as convincing people, but it certainly made Piers Morgan really, really upset, and you could see that visibly by the end of the interview. And supposedly one of the producers cried. I mean, Joe's definitely put information out there. It may have not gotten all received by the average person's intelligence, unfortunately, but he put the information out there. If you listen to all of it, that would really, anybody that would actually have a discerning ear, and look that stuff up would pretty much, make them cry if that was able to be brought out. But it's what it is. It kind of stinks that it happens like that, but we'll see what happens. In any case, I mean, I hope he does eventually put things less emotionally, because the average person doesn't like that type of shock jock value in the information presented. But what are you gonna do? I mean, it is true that Piers Morgan, in his cue cards, stuff like that, they all set it up for couching the emotional response questions. How do you deal with that? That's a really good question. You don't always know. Like, is it better to just get the information out there, or is it better to, fend from the producers crafting your argument? In other words, putting you on the defensive. That's what it's coming down to. All right, so I'll talk to y'all later, and I guess I'll stay posted.